It's been over 15 years and World of Warcraft is still being played by millions online. Sure, it's not as popular as before, but there's something about this world that continues to captivate players. Many believe that WoW is the king of MMOs, and what better way to celebrate that than putting together a feast fit for a king? Feast your eyes on World of Warcraft, the official cookbook. World of Warcraft, the official cookbook by Chelsea Monroe Castle has been out for a while now. It's been out since 2016, but even if it's one of the older gaming cookbooks in my collection, I still wanted to try it out since I find the world of Azeroth so fascinating. The author points out that it can be difficult crafting real-world recipes out of fictional food, but the world building in Warcraft is so creative and unique that it's easy to draw inspiration from it. Each recipe page comes with a list of ingredients, steps, as well as other useful information such as difficulty, prep and cook time, servings, and suggested pairings. Compared to other cookbooks, the recipe steps have less bullet points, but that's because they combine a lot of steps together. You might not like that if you're the type that likes each step broken down and separated, but I didn't mind it. Seeing less bullet points made it feel shorter and less daunting, even if it's probably the same amount of steps. Each recipe is accompanied by beautifully composed full-page photos of the dish. There's also a short write-up for most of the recipes that make references to Warcraft characters and locales, and there are also accompanying sketches that show those characters and locations. But my favorite detail in this book is that each recipe shows item icons that are straight from the game. Most of the recipes are actually inspired by in-game consumable items, and it's cool to see what these dishes look like in the game and the real-life interpretation side by side. It also makes me appreciate just how much food items there are in this game. The cookbook and its dishes are looking really solid, but will tasting the food actually wow me? I'm gonna make a full 3-course World of Warcraft meal to find out. Alright chums, let's do this. We're gonna start off with some Dragonbreath chili. You're gonna need a very large pot for this because this is gonna be a lot of chili. 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. The recipe calls for 1 chili pepper, I used jalapeno, 2 Thai peppers, and 1 chipotle pepper. Now for me, I like my food spicy, so I doubled the peppers, but adjust to your own taste. Saute those along with some diced onions. When they've browned and softened, add the ground beef, sausage, and chuck steak. Then you're gonna cook the meat until it's all browned. At first glance, I'm thinking, this is a lot of meat, but I'm gonna stay true to the recipe. Stick to the plan, chums. When the meat is cooked, add in 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1 teaspoon of cocoa. Then add in a 6-ounce can of tomato paste, and mix everything well so that it's all evenly distributed. And then you're gonna pour in the beer and the beef broth, 2 15-ounce cans of chili beans, and 2 28-ounce cans of diced fire-roasted tomatoes. If you can't find canned fire-roasted tomatoes, I'm sure regular canned tomatoes is fine. Lower the heat so that it's simmering and then cook it for 2 hours until it's thickened a little bit. When you're done, scoop it in a bowl and add some cheese and you're good. For the main, we're gonna be making Dirge's Kickin Chimaerok chops. In a baking dish, you're going to be combining 1 tablespoon of red curry paste, 1/4 cup of rum or bourbon, 1/2 cup of chicken broth, and after that, you're going to add in 1 pound of lamb shoulder chops. But for me, I'm gonna be using lamb loins because that's what I found in Costco. And this is definitely more than 1 pound because Costco. Make sure the meat is well marinated, and then you're gonna let it sit in the fridge for 8 hours. When it's done marinating, get a pan and heat up some olive oil in medium heat. While it's heating up, you're gonna need to make the spice rub. In a small bowl, you're gonna put in 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of paprika, 1 teaspoon of pepper flakes, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, also a pinch of salt. Take the marinated lamb and pat it dry, and then rub it up that spice goodness onto the meat. When your pan is hot, put the chops in and cook each side for about 4 to 5 minutes, or until it's cooked through to your preference. When done cooking, remove from the pan and just let it rest for 5 minutes. Next up, we're making Moser's Magnificent Muffins. In a bowl, you're gonna mix together 1 cup of milk, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, 1/2 cup of applesauce, 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar, 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, 1 egg, and a teaspoon of vanilla. Mix it up, make sure that it's even, Then add a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ground ginger. I didn't have any, so I used minced ginger instead. Follow that up with 1 cup of rolled oats, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of baking soda. Pinch of salt, and then stir in 2 cups of all-purpose flour, but do it 1 cup at a time until you get a thick batter. Now you have enough batter to fill in 12 muffin cups. Now to make the streusel topping. In a bowl, you're going to combine 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, pinch of salt, 1/3 cup of flour, 1/3 cup of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a half cup of rolled oats. Mush that all together so that there's no large pieces of butter left, and then spoon that mixture on top of the batter and press it down gently. Pop it in the oven for 350 degrees for 25 minutes. Now let's make the maple nutmeg icing. In a bowl, you're going to combine 1 cup of confectioner's sugar, a dash of vanilla, a pinch of ground nutmeg, 2 teaspoons of maple syrup, 2 tablespoons of milk. Whisk that up until you get a nice, thick, drizzleable consistency. When the muffins are done, take them out, let them cool, do the toothpick test thingy, and then drizzle on that sweet, sweet glaze. So here it is, a 3-course World of Warcraft meal. Let's start off with the Dragonbreath chili. I was at first concerned that it would be too meaty, but after adding the tomatoes and broth, the proportions were perfect. Doubling the hot peppers made it perfectly spicy for me, and I like the texture difference between the ground meat and the cube steak. I make chili often in my Instant Pot, but I gotta say, I think this is actually better, so I think this is my new go-to recipe for chili. Word of warning though, this is a huge batch of chili. I recommend just making 3/4 or half of this recipe unless you're making this for a lot of people or just want to eat chili for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all week. For Dirge's Kickin Chimaerok chops, the first thing that hits you is the kick of the spice rub. The earthiness of the cumin, nutmeg, and cinnamon, and the heat of the pepper gave it a really flavorful crust. I was really interested in seeing how that marinade was going to taste, but to be honest, I really didn't taste the red curry and rum combo. I even let it marinate for a good 24 hours, but I just couldn't taste it. The spice rub makes up for it though, and my whole kitchen smelled so warm and inviting. The meat was cooked well, but a little under. I saved half of the batch and cooked it the next day, 2 minutes each side, and popped it in the oven, 400 degrees for 15 minutes, and it came out way better. And for dessert, we look to Moser and his magnificent muffins. I'm not a big muffin or cupcake guy, but I gotta say, this thing smells so good. The smell coming out of the oven was intoxicating, and the maple nutmeg icing, oh man, it smelled so good. The cake part itself was a little boring in my opinion. I think it would have tasted better if it had nuts or raisins in it, but the muffin top was crazy good. The buttery crunchy topping with that maple nutmeg glaze was addicting. Mr. Moser, thank you for the magnificent muffins. Maybe I got lucky picking some bomb recipes, but I was pretty impressed by the food of World of Warcraft the official cookbook. The food photos looked good, the dishes tasted great, and my kitchen smelled really good. I think WoW fans are going to get a kick out of seeing and tasting these renditions of the in-game food. Thematically, I think it could have been a little bit more whimsical to highlight Warcraft's fantasy setting, but if the goal was to create some realistic and tasty versions of the game's food, then I think it did a great job. And I must say, the desserts in here look really good. Probably the most interesting dessert recipes out of all of my gaming cookbooks so far. Final verdict, this chow is wow. Thank you for watching. Happy gaming, happy eating.